Hi everyone, and welcome to Snack English. Today's lesson is the ninth one in the series of vocabulary workshop, the ninth one. This means 90 words, 90 academic words. The greater number of words you have, the more you can interpret ideas from others and express your own ideas too. Having a rich vocabulary will help you communicate in a more engaging way. In today's lesson, you are going to learn 10 new words and some of their synonyms. They are beneficial for IELTS, TOEFL, SAT, ACT, writing, and speaking. After studying these words, you know it's very important to practice. So, in the description box, you will find some beneficial links that will help you practice and answer a variety of questions. Before I start, click on that subscribe button and make sure you click on the bell so you get notified every time I put out a new video. Let's get started.
The war started in 2011 as a movement to oust President Bashar al-Assad and his government.
The war started in 2011 as a movement to remove President Bashar, to drive Bashar out of his position.
He knew that the Americans would eventually come for him, that they would try to oust him.
The Americans would eventually come for him and they would try to remove him. The first word is oust. Oust is a verb. It's pronounced oust. Oust. To oust someone from his position is to remove or drive out of a position or place. Another example, many citizens of Germany wanted to oust Adolf Hitler but were too scared to do anything about it. Which means many citizens of Germany wanted to remove Adolf Hitler, but of course they were so scared to do that.
I appeal to those who will peruse this text to conduct their reading without envy.
I appeal to those who will peruse this text, which means I appeal to those who will read carefully this text, or those who will scrutinize this text.
Excuse me, would you mind if I peruse your stock portfolio?
Excuse me, would you mind if I peruse your stock portfolio? Which means, would you mind if I read through your stock portfolio? Number 2, peruse. If you peruse something such as a letter or an article, you read it carefully, you examine it carefully. It's pronounced as peruse, peruse. Another example, he's going to peruse the internet for tips on how to become a pilot, which means he's going to read to find any useful information from the internet on how to become a pilot.
Some to the landfill, some to the promontory.
Some to the landfill, some to the highest point. Let me give you a clear example. We chose a high promontory overlooking the sea as the perfect spot for our picnic lunch, which means we chose a high point to be able to see the sea because it's the perfect point. Number 3, promontory. Promontory is a noun. It's pronounced promontory, promontory. It means a high point of land extending into water. In other words, a narrow area of high land that sticks out into the sea. Look at this image. This is a narrow area.
We've come to snowy Promontory, Utah. We're at the ATK facilities for the final reusable solid rocket motor test.
We have come to Snow Cliff, which means we have come to high snowy point. Number 4, sustain. Sustain. Sustain is a verb. It's pronounced sustain. Sustain. It means to cause or allow something to continue for a period of time. If you sustain something, you continue it or maintain it for a period of time.
So let's sustain this progress.
In this video, let's sustain this progress. Let's maintain this progress. Let's strengthen this progress.
Art. It's what I've chosen. It's what I've worked, my whole life to sustain in any way that I can. And it's how I support my son.
Another example, my whole life to sustain in any way that I can, and it's how I support my son. Which means my whole life is to maintain in any way, to keep in any way that I can, and it's how I support my son.
Most assuredly, he was very solicitous of the Soviet delegation at Bretton Woods,
Most assuredly, he was very concerned or interested in the Soviet delegation. Number 5, solicitous. Solicitous. It's pronounced solicitous. Solicitous. It's an adjective. A person who is solicitous shows anxious concern for someone or something. Some synonyms such as concern, caring, interested. An example, I wonder you are so solicitous for one you so clearly despise, which means I wonder you are so concerned about someone you so clearly despise.
Although they seem to me to be extra solicitous of Russia generally and Putin specifically.
They seem to me to be extra solicitous of Russia generally and Putin specifically, which means they seem to me to be extra concerned or interested in Russia generally and Putin specifically.
It enabled me to see the residue from our society.
In the previous example, it enabled me to see the residue from our society, which means it enabled me to see the remaining of our society. Number 6, residue. Residue. Residue is a noun. It's pronounced residue. Residue. Residue means a small amount of something that remains after the main part has gone or been taken or used. For example, there was a sticky residue on the door handle, which means there was a sticky part on the door handle. It might be used in a different way. Watch this video.
Silence is the residue of fear. Silence is the residue of fear.
Silence is the rest of fear. Silence is the remainder of fear. Some synonyms such as remainder, rest, or parts left over.
I should have the right to a recourse to sue you for getting my information out.
Which means I should have the right to an option or assistance to sue you for getting my information out. Number 7, recourse. Recourse. Recourse is an uncountable noun. It's pronounced recourse. Recourse. It means the act of seeking help or protection. In other words, it's an option or assistance during a difficult period or a situation. For example, if my letter of complaint fails to get results, I will have recourse to a higher authority, which means if my letter of complaint fails to get results, I will have an option. I will have another way, another assistance to a higher authority.
So that they could resist that, if that were the only recourse left. If everything else fell apart politically and the only recourse left was to wage a military insurrection against your own government.
So that they could resist that if that were the only action, if that were the only option or action of help left. She said the only recourse left, which means the only action or choice left.
I thought he was too staid, too cautious, too conservative.
Which means I thought he was too serious, too cautious, too conservative. Number 8, staid. 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 Staid is an adjective. If you say that someone is staid, you mean that he or she is sober, serious. If you say that something is staid, you mean that this thing might be dull or boring and rather old-fashioned. For example, my state professor was not impressed when I told a joke about my missing assignment, which means my serious professor was not impressed when I told a joke about my missing assignment. It might mean dull or boring. For example, the teenage girl thought the nursing home party sounded staid, which means the teenage girl thought the nursing home party sounded boring, sounded old-fashioned for her. Maybe the party didn't impress her well.
Just because these guys over here are boring and staid and old school.
These guys over there are boring and staid and old school. Some synonyms such as serious, sober. It might mean quiet, boring, or dull.
And if you are prone to oversharing, try editing.
Which means if you are liable to or likely to overhearing, try editing. Number 9, prone. Prone. Prone is an adjective. To be prone to something, usually something bad, means to have a tendency to be affected by it or to do it. For example, During allergy seasons, my close friend is prone to having a couple of asthma attacks each day, which means during allergy seasons, my close friend is liable to or is likely to having a couple of asthma attacks each day.
Paper processes are also slower and more prone to errors.
Paper processes are also more liable to errors or more likely to errors, more inclined to errors. Some synonyms such as liable, inclined, likely. Another example, unfortunately I am prone to earaches and sinus infections, which means unfortunately I am liable to or likely to earaches and sinus infections.
So it was kind of an interesting, qualm for a lot of people on the left because the things he said were pretty bad.
Which means, so it was an interesting doubt or uncertainty for a lot of people on the left. Number 10, qualm. 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 Qualm is a noun. If you have a qualm, you have a feeling of doubt or anxiety about whether you are doing the right thing or not. In other words, it's a pang of conscience, a sense of right or wrong. For example, without any qualm, the killer shot the young woman in the face. Without any doubt, without any anxiety, without any uncertainty, the man shot the woman. You may ask, do you have any qualms about, for example, do you have any qualms about agreeing to the trip? Which means, do you have any doubt about going to the trip today?
We annihilate them without a qualm.
We annihilate them without any qualm. We annihilate them without any doubt, without any anxiety. Some synonyms such as regret, uneasiness, doubt, or second thought. The last example, my qualm with this company is their lack of contributions to local charities, which means my doubt or my uncertainty with this company is their lack of contributions to local charities. Thank you for watching. I hope you had a good listen. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you are a new visitor.